Hey now, it's Terry Aberhart here, today's host of Growing the Future podcast. We are back with season 4, episode 9. You can sign up for a newsletter at growingthefuturepodcast.ca to get emails about our new episodes and find all of our past episodes there. Make sure to give us a follow on all the social media platforms and our YouTube channel. You can also find the Aberhart family of companies online, starting with aberhartfarms.com to learn about our farming operation in Saskatchewan, suregrowth.ca to learn more about the precision agronomy and consulting services we offer there, and as well convergencegrowth.com, where we're working to help accelerate technology solutions across food, agriculture, and health. And of course, Aberhart Ag Solutions bring in biosol and healthy, sustainable fertilizer products to the nation. I am so excited today to have a guest that I'm very, very excited about. Our next guest is going to be Lesley Kelly. She is a creator of High Heels and Canola Fields. And if you haven't seen her on, the interweb or wherever it is out there in social media, you've been living in a hole somewhere. But she's also the co-founder of Do More Ag, and now a new host as well of the podcast What the Farm. So we're probably going to get into that. She's a prairie girl with a big passion for agriculture and advocating for mental health. The Do More Agriculture Foundation is a not-for-profit organization that is championing the well-being of all Canadian producers and are challenging the culture of agriculture to take care of their mental well-being. You can find her on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube, or on her website at highheelsandcanolafields.com or Do More Ag. And today we're going to be talking about all things mental health and agriculture. We're also going to be talking about, why it's so hard for us to be open about the challenges and be vulnerable as people in the ag community. And we're also probably going to touch on, some tips and tricks on how to deal with various different things. And I'm so excited to have Lesley on the podcast. This is an area that is near and dear to my heart. We've all suffered through our own battles at times. And I think generally as agriculture, we are not very good at talking about these things. And I'm just so inspired by the work that Lesley and others are doing in this area. And I'm really excited to have the conversations that we're going to have today. So Lesley, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today. Why don't you just start with telling us a little bit more about yourself and why you're passionate about doing the things that you've been doing out there in the world?
Oh, wow. Well, thank you so much for that introduction. Yeah, it means a lot to me to be able to share my story and be on the podcast. So thank you so much for the invitation. I am a grain farmer. I never ever thought of myself as being a farmer or becoming a farmer because I'm a marketer by trade. I remember when my husband and I were driving around on grid roads when we first started dating, and he wanted to farm, and I said, "Oh, I'm never going to marry a farmer." And he said, "I kind of hurt his soul." But fast forward about 6 years later, and yeah, married a farmer, and I've had an amazing career within agriculture. But I find myself being just involved both at the farm level and industry level and trying to share my passion and love for food and farming wherever I go.
That's awesome. So are you from a farm background, Lesley, or did you just kind of fall into farming because that's where the love of your life dragged you?
Yeah, it's funny. So we farm on my family farm. So I am born and raised on the farm. But I wanted a career being almost like Donald Draper from Mad Men, an aspiring account executive working in downtown Calgary or Toronto. And I got to do a lot of the marketing aspects. I got to work behind the scenes on campaigns and with companies who had in-house agencies, ATB Financial and Farm Credit Canada. But my passion was reignited during one of my first jobs outside of university, and I got to hear all the farmers and their stories and what drove them, and what kept them up at night, and why they did the things that they did. And then met my husband and we got married, and we were living out in Alberta. He was on the rigs and I was working in downtown Edmonton, and made the decision to come back to the family farm because my dad wanted to start the transition process. And so my brother and Matt and I then yeah, started to farm with my family about 10 years ago now.
That's awesome. So, what I've seen following you on the interweb, and I used to be a little bit on more on social media than I am now. I still follow it, but I'm not as active posting. But you started out sharing some of these, wonderful positive messages about telling our story, which most of us are terrible at doing in agriculture, but also highlighting some of these things in mental health. And I've kind of watched the journey over the years where you have just grown into this amazing advocate. You're traveling to conferences and speaking about mental health and farming, and you're sharing all kinds of amazing stories. And it was, if a couple months ago, I was flipping through some of your social feeds and just being inspired by what you were sharing. I was like, man, I got to have Lesley on the podcast. This is just such amazing stuff. And I'm so grateful for the work that you are doing, because let's face it, at times we all struggle with these things. And so just, tell us a little bit about, what makes you so passionate about doing what you're doing, and how you've, kind of become this, in my mind, a little bit of a superstar, voice and champion for mental health and agriculture for us.
Yeah, I never ever thought that I would be a mental health advocate. A decade ago, I didn't know much about mental health, but where my passion comes from is right at the grassroots. It's my family, and I have two young boys. And my hope and dream and goal is that if they choose to farm, and they enter this amazing life, they will have some hard times. It's not if they go through hard times, it's when they go through hard times. And I hope that they have the resources and the support and that community around them, where I found at times my family and I, it was hard. It was very hard for us. So my what I've realized in my journey, I was more on social media, or I started my journey on social media about 6 years ago, and I started High Heels in Canola Fields. And I started that because I was in downtown Vancouver. We were selling a snack food. Our farm had a barley snack food. We were selling directly to consumers, and I didn't know how to answer some of those hard questions. And a woman came up to me. I was very pregnant and very hormonal. I was very sweaty. I was a hot mess. And she came up to me and she looked at my belly, and she said, "Do you use chemicals on your farm?" And I said, "Yes, and here's why." And before I could answer, she told me I was a bad mom. And so I took that feedback really hard. But then what I realized was she had such a fear, even from a farmer that she was talking directly with. And then what I realized after that, so I started High Heels in Canola Fields, and through sharing more of that story, I realized that your words matter. And what you say to each other can have an effect, a positive effect or a negative effect. And then I saw that with my family, where we didn't talk a lot about mental health. We didn't know how to talk about it. We didn't know how to use those words. We didn't know how to communicate. And what we did was then we just didn't talk to each other. And I saw my family become very impacted. So my husband lives with anxiety. He suffers from panic attacks. I lived through postpartum depression after our second boy, Copeland, was born, and he's named after barley, and he likes to have a good time. Um, and then my sister, she was recently diagnosed with having borderline personality disorder. My brother came upon a tragic accident a few years ago, and with that is living with PTSD and anxiety as well. And then when my dad was suffering through cancer and treatments, he battled anxiety and depression. So I saw my family go through such heartache and hard times, and through learning more about mental health and talking about it and learning how we can support each other and ourselves, I would say over the past 10 years, it's brought our family closer and stronger together for it. So, with me sharing and having a passion to share more about mental health in that story, my goal is that it could help somebody else. If it just helps one other person, um, and through the things that we've learned, so someone doesn't have to go through that pain that we went through. That's what drives me to share and help encourage other people um, to go to those supports and resources and to bring those resources to agriculture.
Yeah, that's great. I'm getting, kind of emotional just listening to you, and I knew I would, and listening to all your stories and all the different people in your life that have these issues. Like my first thought is like, wow, like you have dealt with a lot, and there's a lot of different people and situations that you've have impacted your lives and the lives of the people that you love. And the second thought is the reality is that's almost everybody out there, whether we admit it or not. And one of the reasons we're having this podcast is because like we've lived through the same kind of things in our family. I mean, my dad had a brother that took his life because of mental health, and he had to, decide with the family on whether to pull the plug on his life support. Right? I've struggled with mental health at times. My brother has. My sister really struggled with mental health, and a few years ago it got to the point like where we almost lost her. I've had children. Like one of my daughters has really struggled with mental health, and when you get that phone call from the guidance counselor to come pick up your kid from school, and you're sitting on the combine because they're maybe not safe to drive themselves, because they're having some of these thoughts. Like we feel shame and we feel embarrassment and we feel like there's something wrong with us. And what I learned through all these challenges is that we just think that we should be able to fix it. And when we have a physical ailment like a broken arm or a sore back, I mean, it's easy for us to understand that. But when it comes to mental health, the reality is you can't understand because it's something that you can't see and fully relate to. All these different things, and there's a lot of understanding that and still that we need to learn around that.
So, yeah, well, wow, uh, thank you for sharing. And that's, you hit it. That's it. I thought when we were going through those struggles, I remember talking with our family and saying, no one should know, no one needs to know, because I didn't realize um, the impacts of what that stigma is. And I realized that by sharing, that weight of the world is lifted off of your shoulders, and that vulnerability encourages vulnerability, and that's what connects all of us to know that it's okay to not be okay, and that's what makes us the special, unique, amazing humans that we are. Is being human, and life is hard, and to go through life is hard. Um, so yeah, I'm sorry that your family has gone through that.
Yeah, I mean, that's one way you can look at it. Or for me, I'm incredibly grateful in a lot of ways because I've learned a lot. There's still a lot to learn, and there's times where I've just felt incredibly ashamed, to be honest. And I've had this conversation with my sister. When she was going through a lot of the things that she went through, I didn't understand it, and I wasn't able to support her very well through that because of that. And now I do better. I still don't fully understand all those things, but yeah, I mean, I'm incredibly grateful for those situations. And the reality is, if you think that mental health doesn't affect you or your family, you're either in total denial, or you probably have your own issues about being open. And definitely, there's some people that have the happy pill all day long, and what a wonderful thing, and bring joy to everyone around them. But the reality is, we all have tough days. I like to be an incredibly positive person, and I believe most times I am. But I'm sure if you ask Holden and my wife and my family, at times, they've probably seen when I'm struggling with mental health and feeling down, and I'm probably not even recognizing those things myself at times, right? And sharing openly about that.
Hmm. Yeah, and I would agree. This journey, I've learned so much, and I'm very um, appreciative and grateful for my family bringing me with them and letting me be part of their journey too. And one of my biggest aha moments was because I always thought I was a great support person, like talk to me and share. And then I would instantly go to fix it. Well, you should have done this, and you could have done this, and try this and do this. And I'm like, all done. Check. And let's go. And I didn't realize that that was having more of a negative impact on my family, especially my husband. And remember, my husband came to me after one night. It was in the morning. He hadn't slept all night, and he was going through really high anxiety. And what helped him was journaling. So he showed me. I'm a very visual person, and he showed me in the morning a 8.5 by 11 piece of paper, and on that white piece of paper there was no white. It was all blue, and he said, "These are my thoughts." And to me, it was like that aha moment of I didn't realize what anxiety felt like or looked like, and nor will I ever really understand because it's him, it's his experiences in his world. But that was the biggest aha moment for me to go, wow, like I am so I thought I understood, but I really had no idea. And what can I do differently, or how can I support you when you're going through something like this? So I'm very grateful for my husband even allowing or sharing with me those vulnerable moments or pieces of his life to for me to help support him.
Yeah, that's amazing. You and me are probably programmed the same way, because when I have issues, I want to talk about it. I want to solve it. I've got all the solutions. Like, you can just ask my brother at how great I am at giving advice, even when it is not wanted and not helping. And Holden's smiling here. I'm sure, you know, Holden, you probably have a few experiences of me trying to give you advice and tell you how to just fix the world and make it all better. Um, but yeah, as a younger person, like, how do you feel about these topics that we're talking about? Is this something that is easy to talk about? Is it something that you're learning about in school, or where are you at here?
Well, there's a lot of different things. So, first off, like, it's really hard to talk about because you never know what somebody else is going through, and you can't really grasp what they're thinking in their head. And they don't teach you any of this in school, like, it's not taught anywhere else. So, really, the only place you can learn about mental health and how to help people is by people like you, Lesley, or like counselors and therapists and people that dedicate their life to doing that. So,
Well, and that leads me to a question because I've got two young boys, and I'm trying to share with them some tools to help talk about what they're feeling. So, as a mom, and as you're getting older, what would you tell them or share with me as a mom to help them get what they're feeling out?
well, what my dad always used to do is whenever I would be in trouble or like I was upset about something, he would always just come into my room and sit with me and then tell me that, he's there and that he's listening and that he's not gonna say anything back or like do anything to make me upset. He's just gonna listen and then he's gonna talk about it with me and figure out what we can do. And I think what you really have to do, especially for the younger kids, they don't really like talking about their feelings and stuff. So you really just have to, how do I say this? You gotta just listen and have an open mind, because as soon as you start to have that like mom mindset where you're like, oh my gosh, why would you do that? And why you should have done this differently, because that's what my mom does. That's when they start to get, well, me personally, that's when I start to get defensive and I'm like, well, it's not my fault and all that. So, yeah.
That's crazy. I'm so excited that I've captured someone from my family saying that I'm a good listener, because I think that's the first time I've ever heard that. But anyways, that's pretty cool. I think, one of the things that I want to kind of try to uncover here, and I have some theories of my own, but like, why is it that it's so hard for us to be vulnerable? And I think it's even harder in agriculture, because I do believe that we've come from like this rugged individualism mindset. Like, we came over here as pioneers and we did everything ourselves, and we had to be, whether you're a man or a woman, it doesn't matter. It's like, you got to be tough and like, tough it up, buttercup, or suck it up, buttercup, right? And power through. And somehow we have this stigma in our culture that it's a sign of weakness to share how you feel and to say, hey, I'm struggling, when the reality is, what I've seen in the world, and I think we all know this and believe this, is that the people that have real strength and confidence are able to openly talk about the challenges. So why is that so hard for all of us, and why aren't we talking about it more?
Oh, well, those are big questions. And in this journey, I've redefined what strength looks like. And for me, it's strength is the courage and that vulnerability to share and be your true self. There's no better feeling it being able to be who you were meant to be. Um, oh, it's so hard for us to share. I think just as humans, because, well, especially in agriculture where I I believe strength, like that strength has gotten us through some really hard times and we've had to be strong. Um, but your biggest strength can also be an overplayed weakness. And it's agriculture, there's so many things outside of our control, um, from weather, markets, inflation, like it can go on and on. But it's hard to share when you're going through a hard time, because of what it's that fear, the fear of the unknown, the fear of what people might think, the fear of what it could do to your business. And we faced an aha moment for us as well, was when we were going to share a video of us, Matt and I, sharing our journeys. And I remember Googling before, like, is there a Canadian farmer that's gone and sharing their mental health story? And I couldn't find anything. And Matt and I thought, well, why is that? We thought, oh well, okay, so what are some risks if we share a video of you having anxiety, me having postpartum, what could that do? And some of the things we thought of, and it breaks my heart, is could this affect our insurance? Likely, maybe. Could this impact our operating line of credit? Like, what is the bank gonna think? Maybe. Um, and then what really hurt was, you know, are people gonna go to our landlords and tell them that we're crazy and insane, and our rented land be gone? And we thought, holy crap, that's that stigma. That's another root of agriculture, that stigma, that if we're not seen as being the the strong and the heroic and the stoic, that it could jeopardize not only our business but our livelihood. And that is really unfortunate. And the great thing is, after we did that video, none of those things that happened. Actually, it was the opposite, where just days after, the bank actually sent us a card and said, thank you for sharing. This needs to be talked about more. So it's that fear. We had the fear of the unknown, and there's that fear of the stigma that prevents us from raising our hand and saying, "Hey, we need help."
That's an amazing story. You maybe could have told them if they lowered your interest rate, it would help with your mental health as well. But but yeah, that's like I never even thought of the type of things that you just mentioned. The type of consequences that potentially you could be by open and sharing, and this is a thing that's so sad as we feel these things, right? And wow, like I mean, I just can't imagine Holden, like, do would you be comfortable going to school, and having a bad day and just telling your teacher, I'm kind of having a bad mental health day, just kind of deal with it. Like, is that something that you think could happen, right? And do you feel that, you know, kids your age, when they do talk about those type of things, if they talk about them at all, do people look at that in a negative light, or do your friends kind of rally around that person and support them?
Well, actually, in our school, I don't know if this is for every school or if it's just like certain type of people, but there's actually lots of kids in my class that when they are struggling with something or they're just having a bad mental health day, they'll go up and tell the teacher, and then the teacher will say, okay, you can go over break, and then they can either just go out and walk around the hall for a little bit, or they can go talk to the counselor. Like, we have a counselor, and I know personally, I know lots of people that go to our school counselor for like hours throughout the day when they're struggling and stuff, and they just go and they have chats, and it does really help them. And I think a little bit ago it was really hard to talk about that. Like, if you went up to your teacher back in the day and you were like, I'm having a bad mental health day, they'd think you're some weirdo that's just uh, not normal and all that. But now it's, I wouldn't say it's more common, but I'd say it's a little more easier to accept and be like, oh, okay, I understand.
That makes me so happy because, well, a couple things that as kids, like I didn't know about this stuff until after having my second boy, which would have led me into my mid 20s to even know like the self-awareness of, hey, I'm having an off day. But as kids, to say, hey, I'm not feeling right, I'm feeling outside my normal. And then the courage or the environment, the schools created an environment for you to be able to share. So that is so great. We identified that on the farm too, because we thought, we're all going through this, we will go through this, more within our lives. So what can we do to create a culture that it can be safe for everyone to talk? So we do something similar on the farm, where we have check-ins. So we use a finger exercise. So from 1 being low and 10 being high, you rate your stress. So every morning we ask each other what our stress levels are at, and then for us it's just the self-awareness to know, hey, I'm actually feeling like I'm a 7. So I've got some stress, but I'm still like, it's there, but I'm talking about it. Then 10, it's like, okay, what can we do to help support you? But it gives that stress the less power, and then it creates such a great conversation of how we can support each other, or just knowing it's like, hey, Matt's at a 10, he has to go for a drive, or he has to go get off the tractor and go do this, go talk to somebody, go talk to a friend or myself, or run around, go for a run. But we know that because before, without doing that number exercise, we took it personally, like, oh, he's throwing a wrench, or did I say something, or he left. It's like, was there something wrong that I did? But now it just has created such a great conversation and a good supportive way to help each other. So I love that you guys do that in school.
Yeah, kudos to your school and all the teachers out there. I mean, I would have a lot of mental health issues if I was a teacher, I got to be honest. So, I mean, they deal with a lot, and they deal with a lot of the issues that we create as parents at home and send to school. But that's so cool that you have that kind of check-in system. And so I'm not, you know, very open at sharing my mental health issues or state of mind publicly, but it is something that I've been working on more like within our team and our family. And I know my brother, kudos to him, you know, there's times now when he'll phone me and he'll just be like, man, I'm having a super bad mental health day. And when he tells me that, I know that he's just looking for someone to vent to or to share with, and for me to listen, versus normally he would just call me up and he's got all this chaos going on, and then of course I want to give him advice and just like, well, suck it up, and just, why are you stuck in the gap, why are you being so negative, right? And that just, you know, usually did not end well for him or for me. um and so just having that awareness and understanding, and I just have to say, like, kudos to you guys, and especially your husband. Like, someone's got to give him a huge high five and a pat on the back, because that, in my mind, is strength. To be, you know, comfortable enough to share those type of things. And I've seen the things that you've shared, and again, it's just been an inspiration. And knowing that your husband is probably, you know, not as excited about sharing his story as you are, and the willingness that he has, like, kudos to him. Like, that's incredible.
Yeah, it's been very therapeutic. So the other reason why we do share is by, for us, it's helped us in our journey. And I remember when we did that video, he went and then had a nap because he said he literally felt, because no one really knew. A few of our family members, but a lot of our family, friends, community didn't know what we were going through. And after he shared, he felt the weight of the world off of his shoulders, and he felt like a whole new person. So he gives me such strength to be able to keep sharing and keep passing it on, because we said at the start, even with all those risks, if it just helps one person, if one person watches this and it helps save a life or change a life, it's so worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. And so this kind of leads us into this next area that we wanted to talk about a little bit, is just, you know, why are we so scared to be vulnerable, which we did talk about, but what are some of how do we know, how do we start identifying or learn that, yeah, it is okay not to be okay? Like, none of us want to be living in the gap and dealing with all these things, but we also have to understand that sometimes it's okay to not feel like life is amazing, and just, you know, people have to process things different ways. Like, how do we know when it's okay to not be okay, and what are some tools or some things that we can utilize? You know, you shared some of that a little bit, but what are some things that we can do, and how can we support those people when they're at that state, and not just like try to go in and fix it for them, because it usually doesn't create the outcome that we're hoping for.
Yeah, it's very, it takes a lot of courage and strength to share if you're going through a hard time. And sometimes we might not even know we're going through a hard time. Like Matt, he shared with me he'd been living with anxiety for over 15 years before I had even known, because it fueled him. But then it got to the point where then it was just too much, where he even had a hard time starting a tractor and literally moving forward, because the anxiety was just taking over. And so for us, it was the reassurance, and um, we were always very supportive and encouraged, or very supportive when we shared with him, hey, I see these signs, or I see that you're outside of your normal. Um, and is there anything going on? You know, we love you, we're here for you, we'll listen to you. And it wasn't until we started to gently poke him or share that we see what he's going through internally, that he started to go, okay, well, if I can't keep it in anymore, it's getting bigger than what I had thought. So that was what helped him. For me, I didn't know also that I was going through a hard time until I found myself crying uncontrollably upstairs in our master bedroom. I just thought I was really tired. I was sleep deprived, of course, after having a baby, but I just thought, oh, it's a little bit of hormones and it's just, I just need a nap. But then when I tried to nap, I couldn't sleep. And then I stopped eating, and I didn't even really wanted to be around my newborn. And that was where my husband then, like, hey, I see, like, I'm here and you're going through something, and how can I help? So it was, for us, it was that other person, our person, that rock, that really helped us, that no matter through those bad times, that they were going to love us no matter what. And what we realized is we all have those people in our lives that will love you no matter what, and that people love you and they want you to be healthy. So that's what helped us get past that, or make that next step in that journey of then seeking help and resources. But it can be incredibly hard, to go through that. Even with my family, there's been times where it's like, I know now through learning more about mental health that I am accountable to my mental health, but I can't be accountable to somebody else's. I can help support them, be there for them. I can cut their grass. I can go take them meals. I can run errands. I can take them to the doctor. But that mental health journey is up to them. And that's really hard to go through, because being a solver, saver, fixer, that's hard. But we also, for us to take care of ourselves, we have to have healthy boundaries too.
Yeah, and I think, working within your family or your support network, just kind of understanding how to identify those things, and then also learning what are the simple tools. Like, I've learned the things that, going for a walk or whatever it may be, that I need to clear my head, or to get into a better space, or when to ask for help. Those things are so little in a way, but such a big impact. And also, I'm kind of a fixer. I just want to fix everybody, and realizing, you kind of got to step back and give people their space, and help to understand the tools that they use to help them get through a tough time.
I remember when we first started talking about self-care on the farm, Matt and Derek, my brother, said, "Oh, Lesley, don't make us do bubble baths and yoga." And that, I'm like, yeah, for sure, because I love to do that. But then that made me realize that everyone's self-care, or what they do, is so different. So we actually, on our farm, we call it filling up your slip tank, because we know that if our slip tank is full, then we can go service the equipment. And the same goes for us in our mental health, that if we're taking care of ourselves, if we're put on the priority list, that we can then take care of those around us. So for us, the things that have really helped, or have worked for us, and it's been a journey to figure this out, because when Matt, after one of his panic attacks, I said, what do you need? And he said, I don't know what I need. I don't know what support looks like. And so we started at the basics. And for us, it's a physical component, getting lots of sleep and drinking lots of water, physical exercise. For us, it's breaks. It's extremely hard to take a break on the farm, but it could be 5 minutes or 5 seconds or 5 hours or 5 days. But just knowing that, hey, it's okay. We have an environment that it is okay if you need a break. Matt likes to journal. I like to have dance parties and cook and try new things and be with my friends and go for walks. So that self-care component looks different for everyone, but for us, it was knowing that it is important, and to do those little things that do make such a big difference over the long run. And they can go from preventative to also then maintenance. And then we do things also, after, if there's been a panic attack on the farm, or if there's those high stress moments, just taking care of ourselves in those high moments, and then afterwards to give us time to recover and recharge our batteries.
Yeah, that's awesome. Holden, I love the analogy of filling up your slip tank. Like your love tank, right? The love language is whatever it may be, filling up your cup, right? Holden, what do you do? What do you do to fill up your slip tank when you're feeling down?
Um, well, it's either playing video games because they're really fun, or going on dirt bike rides because that's like my favorite thing to do.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking that, I know when you get mad at me, you usually, head outside and jump on your snowmobile or your motorbike and go blow off some steam. So that's cool. I'll know what's going on when you're doing that.
Well,
But I think this touches on. Go ahead, Lesley.
Well, and I love the. It's very interesting you said video games because I've been learning. My oldest is 10 and he's starting to play video games, and I was always the component of or the person. I didn't grow up like maybe playing a little bit of Super Mario Brothers, but I was always thinking like get off the TV or get out of off the game and go outside. But he's been teaching me that my 10-year-old how video games that was a part of being connected with his friends and how it does fill up his cup. So to me, that's been a really cool experience to see how that is part of his self-care journey. Video games, I never would have thought.
I was just thinking the same thing. Like I'm always about, the kids are way into social media too much, and there's so much negative about that as well, even though there is some amazingly positive things. But I worry a lot about, but let's face it, I mean, our parents, when we played video games and did that stuff, they thought we were never going to make it, and we did. And, that's just a repeating pattern. But I want to touch on this self-care component because it's so important. And one of the huge breakthroughs for me when I started strategic coaches is I think as farmers and entrepreneurs and doing that, we put the business first. We put our family first. We put everybody ahead of us. And that's what I always did. And I still do at times. But it was a huge aha for me when I started coaching, going through some of this stuff. And we did this kind of life extender exercise. And I realized that if I don't take care of myself, I'm not any good to the business. I'm burnt out, I'm stressed out, I'm making poor decisions, I'm not very much fun to be around. I'm not a good husband, I'm not a good father, I'm not a good friend, I'm not a good anything. And it's so counterintuitive to what we've been taught is you give everything that you have out there. And I've had the opportunity recently to help mentor and coach some other entrepreneurs and touching on this subject about, how do you find that balance of putting yourself first? And it seems, again, so counterintuitive, but the reality is if you take care of yourself and your mental health, you can be so much better for everything. And, we need to learn to do a better job of that. And it goes against our nature and what we've kind of been taught, but it's what we need to do.
It absolutely is. And I remember when we first started going down the road of our succession plan. And yeah, like we were, gotta get big, gotta buy this, gotta do this, all about productivity, all about the business. And that was when my dad said, whoa, kids, if after the 40 or so crops that I've grown, if there's one thing that I know, it's if we want to be successful as a farm business or in life, in farming, is it's not about how much land we have or the type of equipment we drive or the vehicle that's in the driveway. It's how we take care of each other and ourselves. So that was the moment, the pivotal moment on our farm where we started to put mental health first and redefine what success looks like. So yes, we do strive for the best ratios on the farm or the things that we could do to be efficient and have high ROIs, but all of our decisions are how it impacts us as a family. So the first value is family comes first, and then the farm, and then financials. Financials is last, but if you don't have, if we don't have each other, our farm, we won't have the financials. So for us, it was counterintuitive, but we're not perfect, but it's something that has really made such a positive impact on our farm.
I love that. I love that you guys have gotten so clear through this process of what matters in your core values and letting your decisions guide you on that. And kudos to that. Like this is another thing that I wanted to touch on is I think as farmers and entrepreneurs, one of the things that's so amazing about our lifestyle is how, our life is kind of embedded with a farm. But what happens in with that is we attach our worth in the world to our business. And I've lived through this myself when we went through a couple really tough years, probably 10 or 12 years ago, and I thought we might potentially lose the farm. And at that time, it was mainly my mom and dad's equity. It wasn't going to be a huge amount of skin off my back, but I felt terrible, and I felt ashamed, and I felt like I failed. And it was hard. I wasn't sleeping. I didn't know if we could go on. And I was attaching my worth to the success of the company. And I kind of hit a bit of a rock bottom, and then realized, like, if the farm doesn't exist, like, that doesn't mean that my life is over. And what really matters to me, and what mattered to me, was the family, right? And as long as my family is healthy and happy, that's number one, right? And so, I sat through a session with Donald Cooper, and he said, are you in business to serve the business? Because if you are, you have a job, or is your business there to serve you, right? And that was just, again, pretty ground shaking for me. And I think a lot of us, and even my brother and I talk about this, like, when things aren't going well in the business, you attach it to your own personal success or measurement, or what are the neighbors going to think, if I lost the farm or my family, right? So these are things that we want to celebrate the great things about farming and agriculture, but we need to be more clear about separating us as humans in the world, and our families, and our business, because they're two different things.
It was, yeah, we had such, we might have gone through about the same time, hard times too, where I remember going around the table and thinking we might not farm next year. So we asked each other, who are you? And your title cannot be farmer. So who are you? So we had to go around the room and say, I'm Lesley, I'm a wife, I'm a mom, I'm a volunteer, I'm a coach. And those are the things that matter, because we were at a point where we didn't know if we were gonna farm, but that redefined, that helped us as we move forward, to know that if we didn't have the farm, that we still will have the family, and we'll still have wife, mom, coach, volunteer. And that what helped us through that really hard moment, hard times.
Yeah, for sure. And so this leads to the kind of the last topic that I wanted to touch on, and just being an amazing advocate for agriculture, living in the gain, being grateful, celebrating all the wonderful things in life. And your dad was a guy that you've talked about a lot, that had this amazing mindset. I knew him a little bit through the AgriTrend network, and know everyone that worked with him and knew him, and he was always so positive. And seeing the stories that you've shared about your dad, and the inspiration that he's been to you and your family, I think this is just something to celebrate, that we all need to be more positive, and practice gratitude. It's not something that always comes naturally, right? But your dad was an amazing inspiration, and kind of a shining light in the community. And you've been very very vocal about sharing that inspiration with others, even though it must be hard, since he's not with us anymore. But
Yeah, we lost him this past summer, and it has been very hard. He was diagnosed with cancer a couple years ago, which really spearheaded or fast tracked our succession plan. And I would say last summer was probably the hardest time that we've ever gone through, both personally and on the farm, where going through drought, and then having to sign checks and give all of our money back to grain companies through grain contract buyouts. And then the loss of my dad was, unfathomably very, very hard. But I am very blessed and grateful for having him for the 39 years that I did. He, like, I've got so many quotes. He was like my Yoda, my farmer Yoda, where I would go to him and seek his advice, and he would have a really good one-liner that changed my whole perspective. And he always, like, I thought he was just always a positive guy, and it's for him that was cultivated. He went through hard times in the 80s and 90s where um, he said he had to learn how to do that. And like there's so many, like he always said, give more than you receive and look for the three positive things. So even when I got the devastating news that he was only going to be in this world for less than a day or two, and I was crying, and I said, I don't know how I'm going to do it, Dad. And he said, just think of the three things of why you love me. And then I said, his smile and his energy and his spirit. And he said, that'll get you through. That's going to get you through this hard time. So even in the most devastating of circumstances, he always looked for that shining light to help someone else get through a hard time. So I'm very appreciative and grateful for what he's taught me, and I just hope to continue his legacy, because yeah, he was a gift to this world.
That's amazing. Thanks so much for sharing. I mean, it's got to be. It just shows the strength that you have, and what Garnet taught you, and yeah, I mean, it's just been yeah, amazing. I mean, my dad went through a cancer operation last winter that kind of we didn't realize was coming, and we're so grateful that he's still here with us. But it just reminds you that, hey, you may not have that much time, and to cherish those moments as much as you can. And I've always struggled with this with family and things like that, and sometimes with my dad as well, because we're all workaholics, right? And it comes time for the kids, dance recital or something, and it's seating time. This year we're not going to be in the field during the dance recital, so no stress there. But on the same hand, it's like, okay, who's going to remember, right? And I went through kind of a similar experience where I had a friend die at 21 years old in a construction accident, and he was just gone. And he was a super, super positive guy. And the last message I sent to him, we were out at the lake together, and he had to leave early, and he sent me a message. The last message I sent back to him was like, don't worry about it. There'll be another day. And you know what? There wasn't another day. And I had the pleasure of being a pallbearer at his funeral, and there they talked about, yeah, people aren't going to remember you for the house you have, or the car you drove, or how many bushels of canola you grew, or whatever. They're going to remember you for what you've done for other people. And back then, I was sitting in the front row, selfishly thinking like, holy crap, no one's going to remember me, because what have I actually done for somebody else, truly for somebody else, and not thinking about my own gain and those kind of things. But it was super impactful, and some of the same kind of messaging that you've shared, right? And so I think my dad, I just, when I hear you share the stories or see it on social media, it reminds me a lot of my father. And I'm lucky that we have a father, because my wife, God bless her soul, her dad passed away when she was 9 from cancer. She lived most of her life without him and didn't have that guiding light in her life, and thankfully she had an amazing mother that took care of them and did the best that she could. But I've always found that my dad's always been kind of like, make sure we do what we're supposed to do and things like that. But when the shit really hits the fan, or you're really down and out, he was always the guy that would pick you up and say, hey, like, it's gonna be okay, we'll make it through, don't worry about it, like, we're here for you, right? And we all need to learn to look at, and this is something I try to tell myself and our family as well, but there's always something, there's always a silver lining. You just have to look for it, and it takes practice, and it's hard sometimes. But like, we live in such an amazing place and time in the world, and there's a quote that I love from Peter Diamandis, because when we look at the news and all this other stuff, it just seems like the world's getting to be a more terrible place every day. But the reality is every metric that we can measure is basically getting better. And he always says that the only thing that is better today than today is tomorrow, right? And we need to work to find those kind of shining lights in those darkest times.
My dad even had a silver lining with cancer, because here I went to him one day and I was having a pity party, through COVID, and I think we were going into more restrictions, and I was worried about my kids, and my dad said, I went through that, getting cancer, but now I look at cancer as it gave me a gift. And I was like, cancer gave you a gift? And he said, yeah, it gave me the gift of time. Get to, it redefined what time was for me. And now I'm spending my time of how I should have spent it years before. I'm going fishing with my friends. I'm spending time in the backyard with my grandkids. So even I always think that, yeah, and he had to go through that. So it's okay to have those moments, and because I don't think the expectation is to be positive 100% of the time, but to feel it, go through it, and then try to find that silver lining, or find that positive, those three good things to help you get through it. So that to me was another, like, just an amazing guy. He just loved farming. Like, I think that was the reason why I loved coming back to the farm, because he was such a visionary, forward thinker, and had such a passion for people in farming. And I think that's one of the reasons why I do what I get to do, or why I love what I do, because I get to spread his legacy and his love and my love of farming and food to others as well.
Well, God bless those amazing souls out there, and your dad was definitely one of them. And hopefully, his legacy and positivity and inspiration can continue to inspire us and more people that are listening to this podcast as life goes on. And that's the amazing thing about having a attitude of gratitude and being able to look at those things is not only is it an inspiration to those around you, but just help. We all need help to learn how to do that better. And that's one of the things, again, I just wanted to iterate, is that thank you so much for everything that you've been doing and sharing out there around this. This is something that we all need more of in our lives. And yeah, when I pop onto your social feed, it's something that brings me joy, puts a smile on my face, makes me think about all the amazing things in my life and that I should be grateful for, versus a lot of other things you can consume on social media that have that total opposite effect of that. And I think we all need to become more conscious about what are we putting into our brains, what are we surrounding ourselves with, who are the people we are surrounding ourselves with, who what are the feeds that we're watching. And if we're looking at negative news all day long, like, you're not going to be feeling very positive about the state of the world. But if you shut it off for months on end, your life will get better every day that you're not on it, right? And so yeah, we need to work harder at finding those ways to feed our minds and bodies in a positive way.
We shut it off and then go have dance parties.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, thanks so much, Kelly, for sharing your story. Holden, you got some thoughts or comments as we're getting close to wrapping this thing up?
I don't really know. Not much. Maybe just the mental health in the farm is something that more people should be comfortable talking about, and we gotta learn and adapt to that change.
I think it's not just the farm, it's everywhere in our lives, whether it's playing on a sports team or hanging out with your buddies at school. These are things that we need to continue to learn and support each other and moving forward. And Lesley, do you have some kind of cascading messages or things you want to share before we ride off into the universe of social media here.
Oh, some final words. Look, my biggest pieces of advice are to know that it is okay to go through those hard times and that there are people that love you and they care for you and that they will support you, and know that you're worth it, that you deserve all the light and the love in this world, and you're worth it. Um, I've gone through, my family and I have learned a lot, and I share just to hope that it helps one person. And I've had the opportunity to receive lots of supportive messages and be part of some amazing conversations where, one farmer said, he came up to us after we spoke and he said, I'm going to go home and I'm going to talk to my wife. You just saved my life. So please know that your words matter, and these conversations are life saving and life changing. So if you see someone going through a hard time, just reach out. Know, let them know that you're there for them.
Lesley, thank you so much. This was so valuable to me, and I'm sure our listeners. The work that you're doing is so valuable. You are saving lives. You're an inspiration. You're a beacon. You're a light for us all. Kudos to you and all the work that you're doing, and all the others that are doing similar work to what you're doing, because I know you're not the only one. And there's many, many people out there. And so kudos to all those people that are out there in the world trying to make it a better place. Kudos to all the manly men and women out there, that are comfortable in sharing and have the true strength to being open and vulnerable, because that is not easy. But boy, do we need a lot more of it in this world. And just thank you so much for taking the time today. It's been an honor and a pleasure. And I wrote down, one of the ideal outcomes or goals for this podcast was just to be able to spread this message a bit more and to help foster, this positivity and good in the world, and, potentially help have conversations that might save somebody's life or might, help them out of a real dark time. And I'm sure you've done that for many, many people over and over. And I'm sure this podcast hopefully will do that for someone out there as well. So thank you so
Thank you
much.
for having me. Thank you, Holden.
Yep, you're welcome.
All right. Well, with that, we're going to ride off into the sunset of the audioverse here. And thank you so much, Lesley. And keep on keeping on. And we'll see you out there on social media and the next conference or wherever that you're going to be at. So